Good evening. Welcome to School Committee for September 8th, 2014. It's 7:34. Normally our first item is the approval of minutes, our last meeting being July, was
20th.
August 20th. We are going to hold the minutes in abeyance until the September 22nd meeting. They weren't circulated and comments weren't properly generated, and I think some folks did have some comments, so we're going to hold those off and deal with them at the next meeting on September 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mea culpa.
No problem at all. We'll move on to student communications. Brad Patterson is with us. Welcome back.
So today was the 5th day of school, and I've officially had my first quiz, so I think that marks the end of summer. Today at the high school started driver's ed along with HHS Green Committee, which the greenhouse is now open, and they've already had harvest of kale and tomatoes. And also tomorrow, the Criminal Justice Club will start, along with Model UN. SAD will also start Wednesday. Some sports teams have already started up, field hockey, boys golf, girls soccer, football, and freshman boys. And tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week, volleyball, rest of boys soccer, and cross country start. That's about it.
Thank you.
And a report.
I know.
And we have open house at the high school is next, a week from Thursday? Right, because middle school is this Thursday.
Right. And
Right.
I think, is there a night football game this Friday night? I believe.
I believe there is,
Yeah,
yes.
that'd be the first
game.
first home game or first game all at all. Yeah, that's right. Great. Okay, any other communications? Questions and comments from the audience? Anything not on the agenda? No? Okay. Superintendent's report.
Start of school, I think I sent most of you an email last week, and as well sent out an email at the end of the day Tuesday to parents saying that in general we had a great opening. I say in general because there are always a few transportation things that will get sorted out within a few days and other little things, but all in all I got around to 5 of the 6 schools on Tuesday. And you know, it always amazes me that within an hour of the children arriving in school, you wouldn't even know that it weren't a day in the middle of March, that people are in their places and education is going on, and so that's a great thing. I did include an update of the attendance or enrollment, at least as it was as of Friday. I put it on the projection thing because I thought you might be interested in seeing how close our projections were. And of course, our projections start in May, and the last projection we had was in time for your August 20th meeting. So those are the numbers here. The handwritten numbers are changes, at least as of Friday, to that. And so you can see the elementary class sizes are very comfortable, probably the best we've had in a number of years. Even in terms of balance. So the total number of elementary children as of Friday was 1987, and that is a decrease from where we started school last year. We tried to compare beginning of school with beginning of school. So the elementary enrollment was down, which we expected it to be, and the main reason for that is the kindergarten, that we have about 50 fewer kindergartners than we had a year ago, and so that is an overall drop. But we had the same number of kindergartners 2 years ago, and last year we had 50 more. So it's hard to know whether or not there's a pattern there emerging or not. The bump up between kindergarten and grade 1 has continued this year. We have 56 more children in this year's grade 1 than we had last year's kindergarten, at least where we ended up at the end of last year. And you can see all of the other numbers. You'll remember that we did add 2 elementary FTEs that we were able to fund within the overall budget allocation. They went to the 5th grade at PRS, And the reason for that was 81 kids, and we were only scheduled at three fifth grades there. We went to the 4, because the 3 would have been 27. And the other one was grade 1 at South, where we anticipated a big bump up and allocated a teacher for there. So overall, good news in terms of class sizes. On the back, you have the secondary, and I always tell you the secondary are a little softer, although, when you look at where we're at least in August in terms of anticipating children, it isn't all that far off. So at the middle school, 385, remember, 388 in last year's 5th grade, and we expected a drop of something, and that has not happened, so that's up there. And similarly, at the high school, we did anticipate that there would be somewhat of a drop there, because there always is, but not much. The cohort group that is now in the 9th grade, last year, the size of that group was 341 students, so there's not been much drop-off at the high school either. So even though our overall enrollment is only up at this point 38 more students than we had last year, where the average over the last 10 years has been 50 to 60 students a year, it mainly is about that kindergarten number, because certainly in grades 1 through 12, those youngsters are moving along, and those cohort groups are growing rather than decreasing, even at the grades, which are 5 into 6 and 8 into 9, where they typically would decline. So starting with the next month, you'll get the normal monthly form for enrollment, but I put it on this just so you could see what our changes are. And I think, in general, we're good predictors. I guess the way we should phrase it is we have to predict something in May when we allocate staff, but we're good record keepers on an ongoing basis in terms of monitoring that as we move forward. Hiring and vacancies. All of our professional staff are in place. We've had a flurry in the last 2 weeks or so of hiring support staff, paras, bus drivers, custodians, and that kind of thing. And so there's another group tomorrow morning who will be here to sign up with payroll of, 12 to 15 people, and they are all support staff. And we now are in a position to get their payroll information, because we have a new payroll person in place, and that name is in your packet. And we also have offered the position of the financial assistant to the director of business to a woman who will start, is it next Monday, John, or the
September 17th.
The 17th, okay. Having given some notice at work. So those missing pieces are now in place. It'll take some while for people to get up to speed, but we think we've hired well, and those things are taken care of. You have in your packet a schedule of special reports and presentations. Every year I give you a fairly thick packet that tells us every report that we've done on what dates in the last so many years, and I think that we can do that in a more efficient way. So at your place tonight is a very simple chart that indicates when we did which presentations, and in fact tells you what would be on the docket for this year, if I can find it. There it is. So it's a chart that looks like this, and it indicates what years the reports were given, and therefore what would be on the target for this year. And because things sometimes don't break evenly, some report has to be moved forward or moved back or something for some particular reason. This year is kind of a heavy year for reports. And so, for example, one of them will be tonight. That takes that off the docket, and I'm suggesting that we combine the health and the phys ed report to shorten that longer list. But those are the reports that would be scheduled, and you can look back and see why those are the ones that we need to do this year. And those would be the ones that we call program reviews. Of course, almost every year we have updates on any number of other things as well. So that is in there for your pleasure. I do have one agenda item, Ray, under the 48-hour rules, so we won't talk about that here, but I will say that most of you at this point probably have seen the video about the convocation, and we just got unbelievable amount of response. You know, grandmothers from Omaha that some parents sent that video to, but very, very positive response on that. And I can't say enough about the elves that put up all of that together, but mainly David Reardon and Allison Janowitz, also at the middle school, 4 elementary assistant principals who helped to corral kids and be at the sites where the filming was done and so on, and then our two choral people, Chris Landis at the middle school and John Abrams at the high school. Tremendous amount of work that went into that, and Cable was wonderful at working with them in terms of doing the filming and the editing, and of course the Ed Foundation also provided funding that took care of T-shirts and also provided some stipending for the music piece of it. So, of course, the question everybody asks is, what can we ever do to top that?
Speech you ever gave. Best speech you ever gave.
It was the best speech I ever gave. Number one, it was shorter than most of the speeches I've ever given. And it just, the whole kid component of it was very, very moving and very motivating, which was what the idea was, of course. So I'll mention that again.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. So last time, we looked at, for the first time, a proposed new policy related to video surveillance. You recall prior to that, the only policy we had with respect to video was on buses. So obviously with many more cameras installed in many of our buildings, and particularly the new middle school and the high school, where we've just put some additional cameras in with our Homeland Security grant money, we needed to look at a policy. So this is the second reading, if you will. We did consult counsel on some of the concerns that were raised last time, and there was a revision done of the language. Dennis, do you want to?
I'm pleased to say that one of the few times we consulted counsel and ended up being simpler
About that.
than and less and briefer than it was when we went into it. So I would applaud that as making it easier for people to understand, hopefully, and easier for us to implement. But everyone should have gotten this copy. Actually, there were 2 copies. One was the red line copy that was for people to see what the differences were, and then a clean copy, if you will, that's the one in our packet here. And the only thing that I've seen on it is I think this is right, and Carol, I think you made the comment on paragraph 3 where we added that "or by other means." Mm-hmm. I think probably should be commas around that. What do you think?
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
That's a good catch.
Right. But other than that, I think, like I say, it's reasonably straightforward. So if anybody has any questions, I'm glad to do my best to field them. But otherwise, this would be our new policy to cover video surveillance in the schools and on the buses and all property.
There isn't anything. Dennis, you want to make a motion?
I'd like to move that we accept the policy to be numbered 7.1, video surveillance, the statement of purpose, and then procedures 7.1.1A.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Well, thank you for the work on that.
I would say, too, that in terms of speaking with Mary Ellen Suidra, who was the counsel that looked at this, she did emphasize the importance of signage, and we certainly agree, and we had that language anyway. So I am asking the principals all to put some sort of a temporary sign in the window. If you've been to the high school recently, you've already seen it. And we are looking into signage that will be more like decals that will be on windows of the major entrances to the buildings. But in the meantime, there's not a reason to do something temporary, just to be sure that people are aware.
Moving on to new business, and Paul, your timing is excellent. So we welcome Paul Gannon, Selectman, with us because we do have a bit of collective bargaining resolution to discuss and vote upon. Carol, do you want to
Sure.
go through that?
Well, we're happy to announce that we have reached an agreement with the Unit A, otherwise known as the teachers' unit, and it's 2% across the board, a couple of market adjustments in a few places, and we've also agreed to delay or put off until next year, eliminating advancement to a higher scale. It's kind of trying to keep have a more modest rate on that, and we've eliminated a step as well, which we think is a good thing. I don't know, Ray or
It's a 3-year
it's
agreement?
a 3-year agreement.
So effective, essentially, a date, the end of this August, going through 2017.
Yes, that would be right.
Right. Yeah, consistent with
The other unions
other
in
union
town?
contract settlements that have happened recently. And, you know, I would just add that I think it was a very positive experience negotiating this time. You know, both sides, I think, approached it with open minds, more receptive to kind of a back and forth, being more creative, and understanding of each other's positions, which was refreshing, and it was a really good, I think, experience, and really happy to be able to get it done and announce it. You know, it was announced to the teachers at convocation. They had their ratification vote just last Thursday, so we're prepared to sign a memorandum of agreement.
Alec is here.
Yeah, thank you. Hey,
Thank you, Alec.
Alec, anything you wanted to add?
Not really.
No? Okay. So,
We should add that Paul is here.
yes.
Irma is out of town, and under ed reform law, selectmen, or representative, are sitting in with the school committee for the purpose of voting on any contract.
Right.
I'm happy to be here for a visit. It's good to be back and see everybody, so.
Nice to have you.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. So I'm going to make a motion that we vote or to act on the memorandum of agreement for HEA Unit A, and we would sign that memorandum.
Second.
Any further discussion, questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That would be unanimous. So 6 school committee members plus the selectmen. That's terrific. Thank you very much, Paul. We will get it to you to sign. We don't have it ready at this moment to sign. I think we'll sign it after the meeting, and we'll get it to you to sign.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody, and thank you for your hard work on that
Well,
negotiating.
and we're especially pleased to have you join us because you were part of the negotiating team at the outset of these negotiations. So
Well, firsthand how hard you guys work.
That's right.
So that's what I mean. Well, thank you.
thank you.
Have a good night. Okay.
Well, that's great news. Okay. So now, moving on to the next item, we have a program review for special education. Liz Flynn, our Director of Student Services, is here with us to give our every 4-year report, some of which may be a little bit of a refresher, Special Education 101, but really just an overview of the program and please, Liz.
Yes, thank you. So a number of committee members were not here for the last review, so I thought I would go into a little bit more background than I normally would. So special education law is actually turning 40 years old this year, if you can believe that. Initially started as Public Law 94-142 back in 1975, and it was called the Education of All Handicapped Children's Act. Since then, that was renamed in 1990, and then it was reauthorized in 1997 and 2004. It's supposed to be reauthorized every 7 years, and we're a little bit off track on a new authorization, but I'm sure the government is working on that, and we'll get a new authorization soon. It also takes about 2 years or so, or a year to two, for the regulations to come out once a reauthorization is done. And very applicable and appropriate to us are the Massachusetts laws and regulations, which is at 603 CMR, which is Code of Massachusetts Regulations, at 2800. And that is in your appendix. It's a very large, comprehensive document of all of the laws, regulations, timelines, definitions that we have to abide by. This is important because the Massachusetts law in many aspects provides greater flexibility and shortened timelines, so a quicker process than the IDEA. So the Massachusetts law is very critical because we're providing actually more than the IDEA would have in terms of some of the timelines. And it's also important because there was a compliance wing with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which consists of the Program Quality Review Program. It also has the coordinated program reviews, which are the audits, and I know you received 2 last school year, one for special ed and one for ELE, which we got this past spring, which details every aspect of the indicators that they're looking for in terms of compliance and those sort of more technical aspects of the requirements. And lastly, there are the state and federal indicators which come up for auditing every now and again. Hingham is a Cohort 3 district, and we're often called upon to provide information to the state, and we currently have 2 right now, indicators 13 and 14, that we're reporting on, and we'll report back later this month. So what is special education? It's this very complex web, and you get a very large binder, and there's lots of laws and regulations and rules. But special education is simply specially designed instruction that's available to eligible students between the ages of 3 and 21, as set forth in criteria outlined by state and federal law. It's really that complex and that simple at the same time. So who are these eligible students? There's really a 4-pronged test, and I've actually included in your packets under the special ed component the state eligibility flow chart, which really walks you through these steps so you can see how each step builds on the next, and it's required to have all 4 of these. The student must have a disability, and that isn't something that is, you think you have a medical diagnosis or you've received a letter from a doctor. Those are really set forth in the definition section of the regulations, so you can consult with what is an educational disability. The student has to have a lack of effective progress consistent with the student's capacity. That lack of progress is due to the disability. In other words, if the student had excessive tardies or excessive absences, that wouldn't be a cause of the disability, and that the student is going to require specially designed instruction or related service in order to access the general curriculum. So that's really the 4-pronged test that all of the educational teams will look at in determining eligibility. So if a student is eligible, they will provide an individualized education program, which everyone knows as an IEP, and they must provide the student with FAPE. That's lots of acronyms in special education, and also ELL now. That's English Learner Education. A FAPE is a free, appropriate public education that was set forth by the Supreme Court in 1982, which is not that long ago. I remember 1982. So that's really the standard as it remains today. Student must be educated in the least restrictive educational environment. That could mean the use of any supplementary devices or materials or support in order to remain in that least restrictive environment. And again, you can see the historical basis of this, that back in the 1950s, students were sort of in a different part of the building and might have been excluded from school. So this is really encompassing the student's access to the general curriculum to the maximum extent that the student can participate and make progress, obviously. So the color's a little bit different on this, but in your packets you can see, I think, a table that we give out around budget time with the disability categories and the number of students. And this was updated for you as of June at the close of school. And you can see very consistent that with all of these new laws and regulations, the largest area of growth throughout the Commonwealth and the trend is in learning disabilities and health, which is ADHD in that disability area around health and learning disabilities. And you can see out of district by primary disability, we had some moves in this area, and it's consistent with what you might expect in terms of having, multiple disabilities and autism spectrum disorders in out-of-district placements. And if you read that, the colors aren't that good on this slide, but if you read across, that's where the categories are. But your tables are very clear. So I think just a couple important aspects about the IDEA and about special education is it does emphasize high expectations for all students, and it really tells us that disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the rights of individuals to participate in or to contribute to society. And further, that improving the educational rights for students with disabilities is an essential element of the national policy of ensuring equal opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disability. And we wholeheartedly agree with that in Hingham, and that is also our philosophy. So at a glance, where is our special ed population right now? So if you look at the district statistics from kindergarten to grade 12 plus, I include that because remember eligibility goes for certain students up till age 21 and it ends at the 22nd birthday. We have a total of 4,152 students, and the special ed rate in that group is 12.5%. The preschool, if you look at the preschool population included into that pre-K to 12 plus, the numbers at last count was 4,222, and I believe the stats in your packet is 14.2%, but obviously in the preschool, there are a higher number percentage-wise of students with disabilities because that is one of the purposes for the preschool education. And lastly, I'd like to know that our out-of-district students are currently at 49. When I arrived in 2012, we were at 63, and we have worked very hard in terms of leveraging our resources appropriately. We did have several graduations from that overall number. We assisted some students who, had met their requirements, but, needed some assistance in moving forward to that post-secondary level. And we've also retrieved a number of students who are now in the wonderful programs that we currently have offered in district.
Liz, do you
Yes.
want questions as you go or at the end?
As we go is fine.
Okay, so the 12.5%, is that about what you see nationwide?
Well, it depends what part of the nation you're in. It is fairly consistent with our local South Shore communities. Maybe it's slightly on the low end, but Massachusetts as a state, and again, that considers a lot of the larger urban centers, which have higher rates, is in the low 20s. But I would say it's fairly consistent with what you might see in the South Shore. Perhaps slightly lower. And again, that is the great work of all of our exceptional special educators and also parents too, who are doing a lot to support students outside of school to reinforce concepts taught and provide a rich educational experience for their children. Any more questions? So program improvements. You all have heard the content in our ELA and math and other areas. So the special education, is specialized instruction to support those same content areas. It's the same curriculum frameworks that all students are using, just with specialized instruction, specialized accommodations, modifications for some students for the curriculum content. We have provided a great deal of professional development for staff in terms of specialized reading programs, in terms of social thinking curriculum, collaborative problem solving, really working at executive function skills to really provide the accommodations that the students need and that the staff need in order to meet the student need. We've also leveraged specialized reading staff across the district, including at the 6th grade level, working with the middle school and the reading department in order to create a more RTI approach at that 6th grade level, which had been a little bit of a problem in terms of sort of continuity of that RTI methodology. And not for lack of trying, just simply because the middle school has a different schedule, and it's a very different setup than an elementary school, which has more flexibility in scheduling. Another program improvement is the continuum of services, especially at our preschool plus. We have a substantially separate cohort there that we've been able to educate and maintain students in district in that program. We've expanded our life skills program, and thank you all, and thank you Hingham for the beautiful new building. And the life skills center that is in the middle school is really outstanding. And I can tell you we've recently had a retrieval, and I'm sure that the middle school and the facility was certainly part of that equation for the families. So that's wonderful, and it will serve the students very well in the future. We have had the addition of a board-certified behavior analyst, which was desperately needed, and thank you also for that. They will work with primarily younger students on the autism spectrum or with developmental disabilities, on working on behavioral regulation so that students are able to participate in their educational program. We have redesigned the transition planning process for all students age 14 and above. The state requires transition planning, which is essentially looking ahead at what students might like. I know it sounds very far away, but from 14 to 18 or 14 to 21 does come very quickly, and it's really tying in what's happening in the educational environment into post-secondary, and getting kids to really think about that process and having the teachers help guide the students, make those decisions and talk about post-secondary. We've also added an out-of-district coordinator who is going to work with us full-time and monitor our students out of district. They can also work on program reviews of those placements and also help us identify students that we could serve in district as well. There is also, as I said, a monitoring process which we'll be able to fully and robustly implement to make sure that, as our Hingham students are, the students in outside placements are receiving an excellent education and having their needs met. We've also, as you know, had successful coordinated program review. In 2013, there was very few minor issues, which were really just reclassifications for the DESE, and we have had several indicator reportings which were also negative. And these are important because the indicators are tied into the funding that we get through the federal government, through the state, and it's important that we meet compliance with those. And I think that we have also made a concerted effort in the continuous use of data to drive instruction, especially as we have all of our MCAS data available, and the school improvement plans also address this. Any questions on any of these? Excuse me. And in addition to the improvements in doing the program review, I just wanted to point out our exceptional personnel in the special education department and the related service providers who make all of this happen for our students on a day-to-day basis and for eligible students during our extended school year. We have a very strong and robust specialized reading program, which I think is second to none, in my opinion, which supports students. As you can see from the disability categories, are students who might have health disability, who might have specific learning disability, who might have multiple disabilities, and a really excellent reading program. Which is not a one-size-fits-all. Our staff are trained in various methodologies and programs and are able to use from their teaching toolbox in order to meet the needs of the students. I also found that we have a real commitment to inclusion here, very strong collaborations among regular ed teachers, special ed teachers, the administration, and also common planning time is, I see very widely in use in terms of making sure that there is horizontal and vertical alignment of the curriculum and that our special needs students are being well served. We've also made improvements in assistive technology. Again, thank you for all of your efforts on this part. Of course, we have very strong parental collaboration, and parents are a vital part of the process, right from referral and identification of students to participation in the team meetings, developments of the IEP, and working on progress monitoring. And also, as I mentioned, we really have excellent substantive and procedural compliance, so we're meeting all of the requirements that the state says we need for programs and service delivery to students. And I would say we exceed those requirements, as we value education greatly. So ongoing challenges. So collaboration was a strength. It's also the time for collaboration does present challenges. With all of the different mandates and requirements that teachers have and educators have, the time to sit down and really think about collaboration is always at a premium. Another challenge remains the MCAS, continuing to support that high-need population throughout the district. Again, that is made up of the students with disabilities, the ELL students, and free and reduced lunch students. That area, although there is growth, the growth is not at the level that the state wants to see in terms of each individual student. But I certainly know Ellen Keene works very closely with the school principals and the superintendent. The schools have comprehensive plans to address this. It still remains a challenge of how we can move from where we are into having all of our schools into level 1 status. I think you've all heard meeting the needs of more complex students is always an ongoing challenge. The students are very diverse with many different issues. Medical needs might be different from what they were even 10 years ago. And the more complex students we get, the programming will have to follow the students so that they can meet their needs. Also, in terms of challenges of planning for that cohort of complex students, we would need to make sure we had the resources and service providers in order to meet all of their needs from a related service standpoint in addition to classroom services. And there's always an ongoing assessment of student need and cohorts for specialized programming and working with families once those have been identified in order to build a program, build programs within programs, and have those be successful and flourish. Those are really the Hingham-related challenges. Some more general challenges, which are probably true to most districts, are the ongoing and increasing mandates that we all face from a special education standpoint. The state is currently in a redesign process of the state IEP forms. As we all know, the circuit breaker can be very inconsistent and is not guaranteed in terms of particular levels, and we have to wait for a 12-month cycle in order to receive the full reimbursement. And by full, I mean up to 75% after the foundation budget has been met. Unknown budgetary factors such as move-ins or increasing student needs and having some unknown or unbudgeted factors come into play. And in general, the ongoing oversight by state and federal administrative bodies, which we have to comply with. Are there any questions specific to the special education component that's at this time? Yes.
So if there's about 12.5% of the students are on these plans, is the percentage sort of flat across the different grades, or are there more kids in the elementary level, the secondary level?
I didn't do a breakdown of the schools. I can absolutely do that. The elementaries tend to be a little higher, which you would expect, especially with some developmental issues like speech or occupational therapy. And the high school is lower because developmental issues have been addressed, and it really is focused on usually targeted. The areas of concern are very usually well established by the time a student is 13 or 14 years old. So I would say it's higher in the elementary school. We did see a slight increase in the 6th grade, which is why we redesigned some of the language, specialized reading instruction at that level. And that would be consistent, I think, across most school districts.
I seem to recall from budget season last year that the middle school group was maybe around 160. Something like, it was actually a higher than maybe intuitively.
Higher gross number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is fair to say that you see some bump ups, but for different reasons. As you move through the high school, a number of our most disabled children have moved to a private placement. They may have been with us through 1st or 2nd grade, or perhaps through 5th or 6th grade, but so some of those students have moved out. And at the same time, there is great concern at some of these points at which 3rd grade might be one, for example, where people are concerned, oh my goodness, if he or she isn't reading competently at this point, or moving from 5th to 6th grades with the increasing demand of the curriculum. And sometimes even in the high school, new plans being written because of provisions for things like SAT, untimed SAT, and so on, that require one to have some documentation. So there are bumps along the way, but we should remember to do that this year when we do the budget, actually by grade level, because we haven't done that.
At the high school, as Dr. Gallo was saying, it would be less common to have a reading disability identified at that point, but it might be more common if a social emotional type of issue were to surface, which you would expect developmentally.
So there are students coming on and off plan throughout their whole educational career, not just evaluated in elementary school and that's their one shot. And
that's right. And actually, by law, the eligibility process must happen every 3 years, or shorter than that if there's a particular reason or a student struggling with the consent of the parents. So even though you might have a student who is quite disabled, every 3 years you're going to go through the entire eligibility process again and determine eligibility again. So it's not just like you come on and then you're always on. And that's the whole purpose of, getting the instruction. For some students, it's internalizing some of the strategies, and then they're able to fully access without an IEP or without services, depending on the student. In terms of the testing is done in the areas of suspected disability, so that would be very targeted to what the student was presenting with at that time. So we can circle back to any special education questions after the ELL component if you think of anything. So English language learner education, I believe you've heard Dr. Gallo say that we have one currently identified ELE student, but we have an entire program which can support the needs of many. So in the past 2 years, this has undergone comprehensive reform which is a growing movement of, I think, about 35 to 36 other states in the WIDA Consortium, which stands for World Class Instructional Design and Assessment. Massachusetts adopted that in the fall of 2012. The WIDA stands for, I believe it's Wisconsin, Illinois, the four letters that spelled WIDA. It's part of a larger restructuring of ELL for much of the country in providing English learner development standards cross settings. And that's part of the RETAL initiative, which is Rethinking Equity and Teaching for ELL. So there's actually in your materials a breakdown of all of these common acronyms and definitions for you. And lastly, all of the state testing that we used to have, the MEPA, the MELA-O, has been all changed and now is the Access for ELLs. So that's the assessment given once a year to determine what level a student might be at. That stands for Assessing Comprehension and Communications in English. Also in your packets, there is, I think, a very clear flow chart about how a student would be referred to the ELL department and how a student would go about getting the testing. It really starts with a home language survey being given to the parent upon registration, and that would determine if an evaluation would be conducted. So under WIDA, it's moved really toward a research-based language development process. They're really embedding constructive academic content knowledge right into the English learner acquisition. They're stressing theoretical foundations, and I love this one. WIDA has a can-do philosophy that really emphasizes that every teacher is a teacher of language, so that every student feels empowered. Every teacher feels empowered to deliver instruction. In the classrooms, for a classroom with an ELL student, there will be a language objective for the day, in addition to whatever learning target or learning objective is on tap for the day as well. And moving, again, we don't have a very big program, but we do have several program strengths. We have a strong commitment to supporting language diversity for our families. We've had ongoing training, even though that's been a little bit difficult because we're in the cohort 3, which the cohort 1 and 2 have many more ELL students, and they have gone through the training. But we do have several people currently enrolled in that cohort 3 training. We also concluded the spring a coordinated program review, which by and large had substantive compliance on all areas. We had to switch a couple of forms which used those outdated tests, even though we were using the Access for ELLs. And we're in the final phase of hiring an ELL teacher who will be able to meet our direct service needs for our students. There's also a comprehensive monitoring plan that's set out for the state in terms of monitoring FLEP students, which stands for Former Limited English Proficients, and that is over a 2-year span. So that would be reassessing students to see if they require additional support, in which case they would go back on an ELL track, or if not, they would exit out after 2 years. In your materials, I have a chart indicating the 5 levels which the state has identified, which have all been changed with the WIDA consortium. And the state has issued guidelines, which are more like a required guideline in terms of the number of hours per week for ELL support, dependent on the child's English language development level. Lastly, moving on, we also support families through a number of interpreters and translation support for those families that present with those needs. We provide materials also in their native language, as we are required to. And we will all be working with Ellen Keene as the state issues more definitive guidelines on what professional endorsement for sheltered English immersion, we will all need for professional staff going forward. There had been some wavering whether all staff needed to have an SEI endorsement on their professional license, or whether if you were just teaching, if you had a student before you, or you were the principal of a student or administrator of a student in your building, whether you would have to have that endorsement. So those are just a few items under special education and ELL that we have been up to for the past 2 years. We've also, in closing, we've also redesigned the English Learner Manual to meet all of the requirements by the state under those new standards.
How many children are involved in this program?
We have one ELL student, and there are a number of students, 4 to 5, who are in the monitoring phase, which is just checking in with teachers, reviewing data, looking at MCAS scores, and then assessing the student on an annual basis. So our next steps under ELL would be to ensure that the staff were appropriately trained when we get some more definitive guidance on the DESE requirements, and again, continue to support students whose first language is not English. And we will always continue to provide high-quality ELL instruction in a legally compliant and ethical manner. Any questions for ELL? No. Or special education?
Questions? I think that, we talk about it a lot during budget season, so, a lot of it's kind of fresh and common discussion, particularly when we talk about the out-of-district placements, and, but that's a good little refresher of kind of the basics of the program. Thank you. It's 2 years already. How about that?
I know.
Yeah. Time flies.
It does.
I think that's the best presentation you've ever done on this.
No, I'm usually very silent. Always here, but very silent. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
That's great. Any questions from the audience for Liz? No? Okay. All right. All right, so we're pleased to be joined by Marissa Ronan from CPAC for annual update on what that group is doing. And if you could fill us in, Marissa, please join us. Welcome.
Of Liz's refresher of special education, I hope you'll let me just give a quick update on what the mission statement of the CPAC is, because a lot of people are not really clear on what the CPAC is. The mission of the CPAC is to work for the understanding of, respect for, and support of children with disabilities who receive special education services from the Hingham Public Schools. It is also to promote a network of parents of students with disabilities who receive special education services, and to provide a forum to share information and concerns. It is also to advise the Director of Student Services, the Superintendent, and the School Committee regarding professional development and parent concerns, and to promote communication among Hingham CPAC members, local, state, and national organizations, councils, and groups, and to promote communication and programs within the community to encourage understanding, acceptance, and inclusion of all children with disabilities. Last year, I'm currently the chair of the Hingham CPAC, and last school year we started with 4 board members. Over the course of this past school year and this past summer, we lost 3 of our 4 board members. So I am currently the only board member of the Hingham CPAC. And we are desperately in need of replacing at least 2 of those people. Our bylaws require that we have at least 3 people serving as officers on the Hingham CPAC. Last year, we had, for the first year, PTO liaisons at each of the schools, with the exception of the high school, and that worked really well to enhance communication. Currently, this fall, we have a vacancy at East and Foster, as well as the high school. We did have a very busy year last year while we had a fuller board. And we are continually trying to build parent participation and clearly struggling with that. That is our biggest challenge. We, as you saw in the annual report that was distributed as part of your packet, we distribute hard copy newsletters, email newsletters, we do free presentations. We have a website and a Facebook page. This past year we donated about 12 books to the Hingham Public Library on special education, and one presentation in particular from this past year that was done in cooperation with the Hingham Public Schools was the Sarah Ward presentation on executive function. It was very well received. She's a fantastic resource and speaker, and on one Wednesday in November, I think it was, or October, we had teachers had a training module during the day, and then parents had a presentation in the evening, and it was a really well attended and very well appreciated. In the spring, we held our 3rd annual Families for Fitness Fun Run Walk at Bear Cove Park in an effort to build community. And I think probably most notably, in January of this year, the CPAC partnered with the Hingham Sports Partnership and formed South Shore SNAP, which is the Special Needs Athletic Partnership. And SNAP is a 501c3 organization dedicated to providing special needs children and their families with the opportunity to take part in athletic activities and programs that are specifically designed and tailored to their special needs and are generally not available through mainstream programs. So since we formed that in January, we actually offered a spring rowing program in cooperation with the Hingham High Rowing Association, and we had 11 participants and 11 mentors. Each child had a one-on-one, and it was very well received, and the kids had a great time. And this summer, we also did a summer program at the South Shore Country Club for the month of July. It was a 5-day, 3 hours a day program. Parents could sign up for as many days and as many weeks as they wanted. And we had 29 participants and 33 mentors in that program. And the majority of those mentors actually were the same kids that did the mentoring in the rowing program. We have a lot of rowing kids who are turning out to be just phenomenal mentors and loving it. So both of those programs were very well received. We're gearing up to offer rowing again this fall. And we're also organizing an adaptive dance program that's going to be offered in 3 semesters throughout the school year. And there are many other programs in the pipeline as well. Another thing that CPAC did this past spring was we went through our grant process, which we do annually. This year we had 5 applications, and we awarded 3 grant requests, and that totaled about $2,500. One was the second part of an application that we received last year for iPads for the occupational therapy staff at the elementary schools. This year we provided the second half of that. And then we did a very small grant to some of the special ed teachers at PRS for math and money skills games. And then the third one was to the special ed team at South Elementary to pilot the Read Naturally Live program. And at the end of this first year, they're going to be coming back to us with some data on how that program went, and then hopefully, if that was successful at South, it would be considered to go district-wide. One thing that the CPAC feels very strongly about with our very limited budget for grants is that we try to affect positively as many students as we can with our small dollars. And we also feel very strongly that the opportunities for services and curriculum are equal across the 4 elementary schools, that not one elementary school should offer this particular reading program and not the other ones if it's a good reading program. So we really want to see equity to the extent that it's possible for the special ed kids across all the elementary schools. In conclusion, participation is our biggest challenge, and because of our diminished board, we will have to cut back on our programs and initiatives this year, unfortunately. But we will persevere, and I would invite you all to check our website, hinghamcpac.org, and we also have a Facebook page as well. Any questions?
So Marissa, obviously, based on, or I should say obviously, but from what Liz's report mentioned a number of times, the involvement obviously that parents have with their kids, which may be part of the issue. I'm guessing that having parents get real involved in CPAC because there's only so many hours in a day. But
Right.
I'm just wondering, based on your contact with all the parents, your sense as to our program in the school system is getting better, about the same, what is the sense of parents? Is it everybody, people are, I know everybody's not happy with everything, but are people reasonably well, feel good about what we're doing in special ed from what you hear, or what is the thought?
I think that's a hard question to answer, because I think that, with anything, you don't necessarily have people come forward who are going to give you a compliment. You tend to have people come forward who have, an issue. And, we certainly hear from a lot of different parents who have, issues with varying, concerns and whatever their child's disability is. Parents want the very best for their kids. And, every child is different. And, to Liz's point, even typical kids, everyone learns differently. And so I think it's challenging to address children in general because everyone does learn differently. And I think there's been more acknowledgement of that. And then when you add in learning disabilities, which is the biggest category, it's hard to address every single child. And even pulling them out for special education, there's a limited number of resources, a limited number of teachers, a limited amount of time to, address each child's individual needs. So, I think, parents spend a lot of time and money with outside tutoring and supporting with other services as well. But I think, I think people are generally pleased. It's a tough subject. It's a very tough subject.
Carol?
Is there anything from the journal, would you like me to put a way for parents to contact someone, or if they wanted?
Sure, they can contact me. We have a Gmail account. It's hinghamcpac@gmail.com. And all of our, any inquiries are responded to through the Gmail account. HinghamCPAC, at gmail.com. Right.
There's a copy of this report in your packet, right, Carol? So you can get there's a copy of this report, I think, in your packet. So okay, great. I love the logo, by the way.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was new last year. Yeah, yep.
Marissa also served on the special ed funding
Yep.
group this year, representing CPAC, and so we have that next on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Two for
Oh,
for you.
excellent, great, yep. I'm also on the
It's a
board of
theme
SNAP,
night.
too,
We
so.
we planned that.
Yeah, okay.
Months in advance.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so keeping with our special education theme, you'll recall a number of months ago following or in conjunction with budget season, we talked about, the possibility of earmarking some of the special education dollars that were left over from fiscal 14's budget for use for future special education tuitions or other costs out of district placements, in the vein of what the pending legislation was seeking to do in creating a trust account, and also what the town meeting article sought to do. And because there hasn't been, the legislation is still kind of working its way through, there hasn't been a resolution of that yet. Discussing it after the budget season and after town meeting with the selectmen and with advisory, and Linda Kutch is here from advisory, and she can certainly speak to it as well. There was seemed to be an agreement to revisit it come this fall, with the potential of earmarking or self-restricting those dollars for that purpose, and the timing is such where I think Sue Nickerson, the town accountant, prepares the annual fund balance report in October. So that would be the opportunity to do that. And my understanding is that, following up on our discussion of it and vote to seek to have advisory and selectmen agree to that, I know that the selectmen are planning to meet in early October, I believe, to take this up, and I'm told by Mary Power that advisory will then take it up later in October, I think, following our discussion and vote, kind of re-ratification of the concept tonight. And I think that when we talked about it in terms of a number, I think we settled on 250,000 because that represented that would cover the most expensive of the out-of-district tuitions that we encounter on a fairly regular basis, and I think that's the number. I didn't go back and check the minutes, but I think that's the number that we ended on.
Started at 2 and ended up at 250.
I thought, as I was thinking about this, and I meant to bring my budget information, but I know John and Dr. Gallo will have this at their fingertips. But I believe we had a real spike in the circuit breaker last year, right? Which will go away this year.
Yes.
So
We actually have an estimate of what that will be because at the beginning of the summer, Liz and Kathy Bird sent in the request, so we know what we've requested. We anticipate that will be approved. So we anticipate it's going to be about 200, a little over 200,000 less than last year because we have fewer costs, which is a good thing. But we did anticipate it would be less. And what we believe now, having actually submitted numbers, is it'll be low 200.
So I know when my recollection is when we state our budgeted numbers and whatever, those are net numbers. We take out those things. So I'm wondering if it's a little bit of a double hit. In other words, if we were to have a large tuition, and we're also going to see a roughly $200,000 reduction in circuit breaker, that would be an impact to the budget, an additional impact to the budget. So I'm where our thinking was around a single large tuition, but this year where we're going to have an additional $200,000 hit to that, and I think we returned how much roughly? Wasn't it close to in the $500,000 range this year?
Yeah, but we're probably closer to six or a little over.
600,000. So I would be thinking, and again, it's not like we're gonna spend the money if we don't need to spend it, but it might make sense to look at that tuition plus the reduction in circuit breaker as an amount to set aside, where we returned 600,000 this year almost, and close to 900,000 the year before? Yeah, so about $1.5 million were returned over the last 2 years. And I recall that we were looking at the outside a 2% number to build up in that account.
So what
right?
number are you thinking of?
Well, I was thinking it might make sense to do 450,000.
So I feel like talking about trying to make up a number is not anything anybody's ever discussed in the past when this subject has come up. So I would be concerned about throwing something controversial out there.
Because I think we
That
knew.
hasn't been vetted a little bit.
Right, because I think we knew during budget season that,
Yeah.
I think we knew then that we were looking at a decreased circuit breaker for the coming year based on the decrease in out-of-district placements. I mean, we're at 49 now, the height of 63 2 years ago,
We budgeted 2 years ago.
but it was not even, didn't actually reach that number, yeah.
All I'm saying is that if our expenses in the coming year, in the coming budget year were the identical, our budget would go up by $200,000, the way we expressed it, if that's correct, right? So, and since we would expect special ed, we've been, I won't say lucky, but circumstances have been such that the budget has actually, gone down a little bit. It's just something to think about, and again, whether they'd want to discuss that at the selectmen or advisory, where the idea was to try to avoid any shocks to the system, if you will. Rather, if we set that aside, and again, nobody's going to spend it if it's not necessary, but if we set that aside, we wouldn't have to be looking at taking money out of, the fund balance to offset anything in the budget for next year. So, other than what was already set aside. So, again, I don't know how anybody else thinks of it. I really, had I thought about it, earlier, I would have expressed it earlier, but I would,
You mean in terms of going for a reserve fund transfer, if something came up during the year that, okay.
Yeah, it would, again, it's a, where we've returned over $1.5 million in the last 2 years. It wouldn't seem to me that this would be about less than a third of what we'd returned over the last 2 years. So, again, and where I don't think it would put us, it wouldn't, from a fund balance point of view, wouldn't put us in any, vulnerable state in terms of the bonding agencies and all that. But that was just a thought I had that, we have a particular, not unique perhaps, but a situation where we're going to be at a $200,000 deficit, if you will, based on the circuit breaker reduction, one unbudgeted tuition, or additional tuition could be that. So, just a thought.
So, I'm Dennis. It's a good thought. When I went into town and testified on everyone's behalf here when they were considering this legislation, and what I remember is what is stated here. It's unanticipated and unbudgeted or extraordinary expenses. We know we're going to have a reduction in expenses, so we should budget for that. It's not that's not unanticipated or unbudgeted.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, my feeling is I don't think we should. I think we should stick to what we had planned. We had a discussion at great length, I think, and Andy had actually kind of suggested the same thing, going for, the whole Megillah.
Right.
Yeah, and this was an account that was meant to be built up over the course of a couple years. We weren't supposed to just all of a sudden have it funded at 2%. So
And maybe we wouldn't need to tap into it, depending on how the rest of the budget shapes
If we budget
up.
it correctly, we should not need to tap into it. It's for that kid that moves in.
Right. It's exactly for what happened 3 years ago, when the kids moved in, and we had $533,000 of unanticipated, unbudgeted expenses, at the end of January, when we were virtually done with the budget for fiscal 13.
In the town, I think we've never had the situation where, we've always been able to go and explain a situation like we had a couple years ago to the town and the selectmen, and been able to. We've never actually had to have a reserve fund transfer, but I think especially where this is our first experience, we should act in good faith and build it like we said we would over the course of time.
Yeah, I think we can go back to the minutes and check the number, but I think the $250,000 number was the number because it represented,
Right.
about the highest.
I think we started off talking at 200 and then
Yeah.
got to 250.
Yeah. Linda, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
I think you're right. I was somewhere at 225 or 250, so, I remember the conversation was kind of going up and down. And Dot made the point that 250 was probably the highest of the tuition, so that would be a nice firm number to. And to Dennis's comments, I think, this money is specifically for out-of-district placements. It isn't because you're going to lose $200,000 in
Circuit breaker.
budget, a circuit breaker. And so therefore, I think that starts to muddy the waters, and I think it would be prudent to just stay clear on why you're proposing a number and not, because this is specifically targeted to district tuition, so. And I think we're going to meet sometime either the end of September, beginning of October. Mary had thrown out some dates, and we haven't firmed anything up yet, but she was hoping that we would be able to do.
Yeah, and I think that she had indicated that the selectmen would hear it first, so maybe it's the end of September, beginning of something like that. Either way, but yeah, I think that would be the plan, and the time coincides with Sue Nickerson's preparation of the new fund balance report. So.
So formal request here simply suggests a letter that we will put in writing, a
Right.
request. I didn't prepare a letter for tonight because I had made a request of both Betty and Ted to make sure that I have the right wording, and I haven't heard back from them yet. So we want to make sure that we word it in, not only fill in the number, but use the proper terminology. So I would suggest that I will put, when I hear back from them, if this is it, that's fine. We'll put in the number and would share that then with Ed as the secretary.
Well, would it be appropriate then to just to move that we authorize the superintendent to draft a letter, using the appropriate legal language in the amount of $250,000 as our recommended amount?
I think using the term self-restrict, I am sure that
Okay.
is to use their authority to self-restrict. That's part of the budgetary guidelines that they have.
That's Dennis's motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, thank you.
Ray, the next
Yes.
item, I would suggest deferring. I've just noticed that Pam did include the last update that you got, which came out on the 20th, and we did get a more recent one last week from
This is the old
Margaret.
list.
This is the old list, yeah. So I will get that to you. I'll actually email it to you. It doesn't require action anyway, and so I'll make sure that you get the right copy of that.
Okay. For those in the audience, that was referring to the fall coaching assignment list, which is not the most recent version of the list, so we'll revisit that. Okay. The next two items, 8.6 and 8.7, are homeschooling requests. Is your 48-hour item a third request?
Another request came in this morning, and the reason I even said that I would at least put it in the packet, well, you may decide you want more time to review it, is that this person thought that she had sent the request before, and we didn't have a record of it, but when we went through the folders, we found that she had sent us early in the summer just a review. This is how things went last year, but attached to that, clipped to that, was her request for this year. So in fact, it was an error in our office that it didn't get on the agenda earlier. There's certainly no problem if you feel that you'd like to spend more time reviewing it. It is a repeat one, and you have some information that was at your place tonight. So we can work with it either way, but I felt in fairness to the person who had submitted something that we hadn't picked up on earlier, I would make sure you got it tonight.
Sure, and I took a quick look through it, and you have no reservations about recommending this?
I have no reservations. That's right.
Yeah, I know this is an interesting one that they actually employ the Trellis Community Learning Center in Pembroke as part of the curriculum. Whereas that's not that common that someone actually attends another, right? I thought that was interesting.
It is not. Right.
Do you want a motion?
Yeah, so let's just go in order, and we'll do the third one at the end. So the first one, if we could, Cosette Youngton.
Yep, so I'll make a motion that we approve the homeschooling application of Cosette Youngton.
Is there a second? That's for the school year 2014-2015. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Carol, you want to stick with it?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the homeschooling application for Rebecca Sanchez Martinez for the 2014-2015 school year.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And the third one was the one we just discussed, which was at your places.
I can't find it.
You want to do it, Carol?
Sure, I got it. That we approve the homeschooling application for Lavinia Clayton for the school year 2014-2015.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
We do expect one more homeschooling application. It would be a new one. Had some discussion with parent and called with a reminder today, in fact, that we did need that application, so hopefully that will be on your next agenda.
You have that, Ellen? So you'll just add that at the... Thank you. Okay. That's great. Okay, so we have a number of appointments. There's 7 appointments, including 1 promotion, and we have a couple of folks in our central office staff, new financial assistant, Aisha Nelson, and payroll supervisor, Michaela Sousa. So welcome to those folks. Look forward to meeting them. I haven't met them yet. Is anyone here? No?
Michaela is actually on duty. She's been here about a week and a half, maybe.
Yeah, she started the
2 weeks.
26th, so, yeah.
And Aisha
That's great. So
will
she
be
had an
coming.
opportunity to work with
Elaine.
Elaine
Yes.
before she left.
Yeah.
That's
And-
great.
Elaine will be staying on some. She'll be continuing to come in to help her,
Great.
through the transition.
Okay. And we have a number of new paraeducators joining us as well.
Is this kind of a large number at this time of year is very typical for that employee pool. Often we have paras who find what they think will be their life's work over the summer. A number of our paras are young folks who are working as paras to get that training and experience, but really are looking for full-time jobs. And so that's part of it, and part of it is because of that, that fact, we often will hire later in the summer for those folks, because we don't want someone to simply accept a job to have the, the bird in hand, and then have to make another change late. So it is typical that a number of these para appointments would come late in the summer. And there are still more that are in process.
Right. Also, got a new custodian and promotion for a head custodian at East to take the place of Katie, who is now our custodial supervisor. And I met Josh at the high school. He's a new hire as well, custodian.
Joshua Bonhouse we hired him last year.
Last year, okay.
Yeah, the
I
new
just
one
happened to
is,
meet him over the weekend.
James Damery
Okay.
this Saturday.
And John has been with us since he's school opened, so he's a good training under
Right.
Katie's leadership.
That's good.
And then we have a custodian who's been the shared person at Plymouth River and the middle school, who will be going to East in Katie's place.
Right. So we make sure we stay on that high level of, stay away from the general dinginess, or what, I forget what that category was. We want to stay
On our
high up
chart,
on that
our
scale
budget
of,
set,
Disorganized cleanliness.
that's right, that's right. Yeah. We have a couple of retirements. We certainly wish them well and thank them for their service. We have a few resignations, as is often the case. Some salary scale advancements as of September 1 for a number of folks. And then subcommittee project reports. I know policy is still at work and is meeting again this week.
Wednesday morning.
Good morning.
And Wednesday night, we're continuing our field celebration planning, September 20th, all day long. Be there. It's going to be awesome.
I have to tell you a story. I was at the high school field on Sunday, and impressively, I ran into two of the custodians.
Yeah.
So we have said, as part of the celebration at the on the 20th, as part of the MIA POW seat, we're going to have, as part of the celebration, we're going to have a participation by the Rolling Thunder. And it was pointed out to me, and probably this is as good a spot as any to mention this, is that was interpreted by some people as a Blue Angels flyover.
I said flyby.
So let me just point out that we're going to have a flyby, but not a flyover.
A roll by.
Roll by.
Roll by.
I think I made it pretty clear in the press release.
Yes. No, that's great. There's obviously still a lot going into planning for that, but it's coming together, and it's going to be a terrific day. Just a quick update. So, just keeping with the high school fields, we actually, a number of us had a meeting last week with our project manager, Rad, and Gail to go over the outstanding punch list items. There's some bleacher work that has been completed. There's some more work that needs to be done that's been identified, and the bleacher folks are going to be back in October to finish that up. There's some landscaping work that is going to be done starting this week, some pavement repair and some electrical work. So there's a number of things going that it's all going to get done before the 20th. There's some additional work with grass, aerating, overseeding, and things that's going to happen after the 20th. All of the islands in the parking lot are going to be seeded after the 20th, but before that, they're all going to be cleaned up. We're going to get all the weeding taken care of, and the place is going to look terrific. So we're looking forward to that. We're also working towards finalizing all of the things that need to be filed for regulatory closure with the permitting boards, planning board, conservation commission, so we can get that buttoned up very soon. But it's all coming together, and we're getting close to closing out that project. The middle school, just briefly, site work continues. The bus loop work is continuing and should be done within, I think, the next couple of weeks. There's still a small interior building punch list that's being addressed, but they're very minor things and don't affect the kids who are going to school there. But that's being watched very closely by our architect. And the additional lockers that we needed, I believe, were being delivered today, and installation might have been happening this evening. So that's they were on back order, or they were delayed in delivery. They were supposed to be delivered before school started, but they weren't. So there was some folks were a little upset about, are they getting a locker? There was a delay in assigning lockers last week, but it finally did happen on Thursday for most of the kids, and the rest of the lockers will be installed within the next day or two.
Are they more of the red lockers, or are they the silver ones temporary like we had at the?
No, these are regular lockers. So what the building committee did was, because there was going to be a shortfall of lockers based on the number of kids in school and enrollment, that we authorized an additional 80 lockers to be installed on the different levels. So just as a round number. So those are being done. So there'll be plenty of lockers for everybody. But otherwise, the site work is ongoing. It's now on one side, essentially, except for the bus loop. The paving work will be finished very soon, and that's also coming together. So that's all I have on those two. Anything else to add?
Right on my nightly drive-by, the tennis court shape has reclaimed itself, because now it's blocked off and cars aren't parked there.
Yeah.
Is there any sense of touching bases with the USTA, United States Tennis Association, for some grant to put that back together?
No.
No.
Because that would be time that we don't really have to do that. But I will tell you, and we haven't even discussed this in building committee yet, because it's kind of in the works, but you recall from the ad hoc committee at the high school that we saved a lot of money with the refurbishment of the tennis courts because we went through a different process, with Roger Fernandes' assistance and advice. We didn't have to blow the whole thing up, but there was a way to redo it much less expensively. These courts are also similarly in very good shape and withstood that parking for 2 years quite well. So Roger, again, does not feel that we need to blow that up. So he's been consulting with our contractor, and they're working on putting together a proposal that'll save us some money in getting that tennis court redone.
It still is in use during the day, because
Yeah.
I went there last Tuesday, and that's where I had to park. because
Yeah, no, it is still,
it was taken.
yeah, it is still being used, and open house is this Thursday night, so it will be used as well as Resurrection Church with a shuttle bus.
Primary tomorrow.
Primary's tomorrow as well. Yeah. And the good news is that the Union Street paving, I believe, got finished today. A little bit of disruption for the kids this morning, but I talked to Roger this afternoon, and everything seemed to be going well. I know John talked to him as well, and so I think it's all done and ready for tomorrow.
Even in the afternoon, high school students aren't very patient with
No.
police details directing traffic.
Right. No, there were details
I
that
was
either-
over there,
yeah.
and it was like a lot of horns going. Just be patient. We'll all get home.
Just turn one way
Yeah.
instead of the other, and you'll get there. No, but and the nice thing about this, we knew that this paving was going to be done. Remember when we talked about the granite curbing, and that got installed, and now the paving is being done, and Union Street was completely blown up and redone, and that gave them the ability to fix the grading. So that'll take care of the puddling and ponding that we had in the aprons. They've also redone the sidewalk, which will take care of the puddling that we used to have and, some accidents that folks had.
Liza mentioned that dip, well, several people, but Liza in particular mentioned that dip in the sidewalk.
Yep.
And that's been totally raised.
It's been
on-
totally done,
Gotcha.
and Roger assures us that will not puddle
I
and
looked at
pond
that.
any longer.
And even a lot of additional stone
Yep.
by the soccer field, so that I doubt there'll be as much parking on the street by whoever on the weekends.
Well, and if you notice,
So-
Union Street was narrowed because they brought the curb out. So that whole side area where you used to be able to park, where the signs are,
Right.
it's now raised with a curb.
Slows the speed down, too.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
No, I think it's a great improvement, and it looks great, too. So terrific. We covered the 48-hour item. Is there another one, or we're all good?
No, I would say, I should have mentioned this under communication, that we did get a letter today from Jim Kirkcaldy, from a formal request to open negotiations from the Administrators Association. They are having a meeting this week, their own group, and then Sheila, their counsel, will be contacting Peter Ebb to give us a few dates.
Just when I thought the schedule was going to get a little
I would hope that's
I'm sure it'll be great.
that's been a
We also
that's been a
anticipate that
yeah.
the Para group, with whom we also have an agreement, a tentative agreement, will be voting, we think, on the 16th, so we should then be able to put that item on our agenda of the 22nd.
And you can free your calendars for the 11th, because we didn't get a confirmation from those groups, yeah, so
So you've got the cafeteria workers.
we will seek to reschedule at some later date.
Yep. Okay.
That sounds good. So I have one
Buses and
question
custodians.
for John and Dot from some high schoolers who came home from school on Tuesday and wants to know when air conditioning's going in at the high school.
I think that some of that was, first of all, it was the hottest day and people were hot everywhere. But I think when people heard that we had an issue with the chiller at the middle school on the first day, the perception may have been that the middle school was entirely air-conditioned.
That was a
And
second,
of course,
yeah,
it is
text
not.
that
The same areas at the high school and the middle school are air-conditioned. So, because there seemed to be a lot of upset about that, as if only the middle school had air conditioning, and in fact, it doesn't.
Right. Just for the folks at home to remind them, very similar to East, maybe the next generation of technology, but aside from the offices and, the same places at the high school that do have full air conditioning, the middle school has air circulation and dehumidified air, but it's not full air conditioning in the classrooms or the hallways. But it certainly makes it more comfortable, particularly on humid days. And on the first day of school, when it was not operable, it was uncomfortable. But it was fixed that same day and has been working well since. So,
Ray, we probably should mention, because we have TV coverage, the two planned tours.
Yeah. So, similar to what we did with East School, there were two open community tours scheduled for Saturdays, and we've picked, September 27th?
September 27th from 1 to 4. And then October 18th from 11, I think I had said 1, but it should be 11 to 2. And certainly our hope would be, we will have some students who now know the building well enough to be there. We'll have some presence from the administration, both here and there. And hopefully, we can have some folks that could come to one or both, but at least one of these from both the building committee and the school committee that could kind of help to give some information and show people about.
We get that to the Hingham Journal?
We will get it in the Hingham Journal, yes.
And are we running another release in this week's paper about the 20th?
Yes.
Great. Super.
She's a draft. She's
Super.
waiting for a few eyeballs to get looking
I
at
brought
it.
copies with me if you guys want to look at them.
Tomorrow at 12.
I know. I work all night.
By the way, they moved the sports deadline to Sunday night at 9 p.m.
Good.
So all the sports, text and photos, Sunday night, 9 p.m.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard.
Especially if you had a game that day.
Yes, exactly.
We also will be posting Sunday's planning meeting
Right.
this week, and I'll make sure you get a copy of the posting as well. The kindergarten report is here. You may take it with you tonight.
Right, so just a reminder, that's in this room, 8 a.m. Carol is taking care of,
I'm doing refreshments. Gonna have lots of protein and not a lot of carbs, so.
so bring your own carbs.
You can have an omelet station set up or what?
No.
No.
Yeah,
Sausage. There'll be sausage.
that's right. It's a paleo menu.
Yes.
Right. Great. Okay, we don't need an executive session tonight because we've had it. We have some.
John.
Jess.
Invoice for the field, project management invoice.
Oh, from
That
PAR.
could use-
Okay, sure.
So while John's, we have, the next meeting is at the middle school, and I'm just wondering, would we want to have that in the distance learning room?
We
or-
looked at that, and we didn't think it's really a suitable place. It's a great place for the audience, but
Right.
not so much for the school committee. It's very narrow in front, and you'd all have to be in a line and not easily able to speak. So I'm going to talk further with Derek, but we both initially thought most likely the library,
Library.
which is also a very nice space.
Okay, so we just have, wait a minute.
Those just a question.
Is this another,
No, that's not an invoice for possible future.
the electrical inspections?
Right. I just have those in the folder right now.
Oh, we already took
It's-
care of that.
It's just in there.
Yeah, I have a question on that.
Okay,
So we're only voting on PAR.
yeah,
That's correct.
yeah.
I'm going to make a motion that we
dates.
approve an invoice to be paid to PAR for professional services from June 28th, 2014 through July 25th, 2014 in the amount of $2,962.58.
So that's project management for the high school fields.
For high school fields. Yes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We need to sign, we need to sign this, right?
Yep.
It's all right.
I make a motion to adjourn?
Hold on one second. Do you have a question on this now or after? Okay. Yes, I think that's all.
John, is this project management for high school fields?
Yes.
For 1 month
It's dated, the invoice is
for the
dated.
dates?
All in favor?
Yeah, all in favor? Aye.
We're running our own meeting.
We're adjourned.